Hello and welcome to Gaming in the Keats. This is your host, Chate001. You can find me on the Ninth Age forum as CHTAY001. I am recording here from Berlin, Germany. However, I come originally from the United States, and that's where I started playing the Ninth Age. But due to life reasons, I've moved to Germany, and I'm excited to start breaking into the Ninth Age community here. Just to familiarize people who may not know this already, the term Keats means district. However, it's a very specific term for Berlin. Other cities in Germany don't really use this term, and it just, think of it more like a term referring to neighborhoods that have their own individual personalities, so to speak. So yeah, this is my first bat rep. I'm super excited about it, like I said, and I just want to try one out to see how I like doing it, how I like the recording, the whole process, taking pictures, collaborating with people, etc. So we'll see how this ends up coming along. My opponent today is VampsinMD, and he not only is a fantastic opponent to play against, but he is the first person I started playing the Ninth Age with during the creation of this project. So him and I have a very long-standing friendship, and I highly recommend sending him a message because he's on the forum as VampsMD, and he works in he volunteers his time to do the vampire community support and works very hard at it. So shout out to you, Vamps. And as well, we have our core gaming group, the Titans of Ninth Gaming Club up in Timonium, Maryland, where we get most of our games in, and I'm able to get in games with them once I am back in the States visiting friends for, say, holidays or things like that. So, anyway, let's dive right in. Okay, so I am running Dread Elves today. Dread Elves are my main army. They're the army that I've played with since Warhammer 7th edition, starting with Dark Elves and then moving on to the 9th Age, becoming Dread Elves. So I'm very familiar with how this army plays. I'm very familiar with how to lose with Dread Elves. And let's see what I come up with today. I brought a Beastmaster. She's riding an Imperious Dragon. She's rocking a great weapon with Cleansing Light, Rod of Battle, and the Obsidian Rock. So she's MR2. She can give herself +1 to hit. I don't think this build is necessarily the best, but I wanted to try out Cleansing Light on a great weapon, get some divine and flaming attacks in there. So, yeah, let's see how she gets on. Then we have a Temple Exarch on Alchemy. She's a Warsmith with paired weapons and Shield Breaker and a Potion of Swiftness. Then we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She's a Salixian officer. She's my general with Shield, Kraken's Hide, Seal of the Republic, Mastery of Slaughter for that good, Multiple Wounds 2, and Seal of the Ninth Fleet to give her unit academy trained. This model was the model that you saw on the first slide, right next to the dragon. I originally modeled this model as an assassin, back when the assassins could take Death's Kiss on a great weapon, I believe, to give them that multiple wounds too. And so this was sort of an homage to that assassin build, and since I only played, at the time, my opponent, VampsMD, I was only facing vampires, so naturally her name is Buffy. She was very good at killing vampires. So let's see if she can do it today. Then we have a Warlock Outcast of Witchcraft. She's a Wizard Adept, and I really want to try out the new Wield Turns because I think it's a really great defensive spell against nasty character Death Stars. And yeah, now that it affects characters with the new updates. So I also brought, 32 spears to just, get their bonus from the Temple Exarch today. I've debated about putting the Exarch into the Judicators, but I really like having the mixed combat threats so that the spears don't get bullied around as much. I like having those Exarchs in the spears, personally, to just make that unit extra more killy, and it's coming from core, so I really like that unit a lot. Then we have the bunker for the outcast. It's 11 Corsairs. We have 2 units of 5 Shadow Riders for Chaff. We then have 27 Judicators, where Buffy will be accompanying them. So they get their full command, and they get their Flaming Standard to just synergize with Alchemy a bit more, as well as, in case I was running up against Ghasts, I just didn't feel like dealing with a regen save, or, well, in this case, Fortitude. But then we have 10 Obsidian Guard with full command. I normally don't run them with full command, I just like the Champion Musician, but I had 10 extra points, so yay! They get a Standard Bearer. And finally, we have Team Cuddles. We have 2 Krakens in the list to run with the Beastmaster. I call them Team Cuddles because they normally don't kill what they're intended to kill. They tend to whiff a lot. So that's been my experience with Krakens. Krakens are, I find, to be rather swingy and random on their damage. Sometimes they spike and can take out what they need to do, but most of the times they just kind of whiff, lose combat, and then break. Or they just get picked off by range damage or shooting. So that's been my experience with Krakens, but I think the Beastmaster needed some friends to tag along. So, moving into my opponent's list, he has not 1, but 2 vampire accounts. And this is, of course, with the new rules updates to all the blood power goodness. These vampire accounts will certainly create a nasty Death Star with those 13 Barrow Knights. The first count is a Master of Occultism with Light Armor and Destiny's Call, so the 4-up Aegis, and then a Great Weapon, Supernatural Dexterity, a Lamia Vampire, that's an Eternal Duelist. So she is re-rolling 1s to hit and to wound. She's hitting most things on 2s anyway. Pretty consistent damage output, but not the toughest vampire to try and take out. Then we have a vampire count, just an apprentice of Evo, but I believe this vampire has a 1-up armor save, 4-up Aegis here, with a 3-up Aegis against Flaming, and then you have the lucky charm to re-roll that armor save, just in case. So this vampire is actually a lot more difficult to deal with, and it's a Brotherhood of the Dragon vampire with Crimson Rage. So, now you got a vampire with Hatred and Battle Focus. Just, again, very consistent damage output, just a pain to deal with, honestly. And now you have Flaming and Divine attacks in the unit as well, so, ugh. Finally, we have a Vampire Courtier that is my opponent's general today. She is a Wizard Apprentice of Shamanism with Crown of Autocracy to increase that March Bubble range, Nosferatu, and Mysteries of the Night, so hence the Shamanism. Now, for my opponent's core, we just have, bunch of skeletons, a unit of 30 and then a unit of 20. The one with the Legion standard to just be a solid anchor in the center, and the one with the Relentless Company to just grab an objective late game, really, or to chaff. Then we have 40 zombies, which will end up being the bunker for the general. Then we have 6 bat swarms. Now this is an interesting unit, in my opinion, because now this is a chaff unit that has 24 wounds, is distracting, and then I believe it decreases your either the offensive or defensive skill when you're in base combat with the unit. So This just became a really annoying unit to deal with, especially if it's flying into my flank, such as Judicators or Spears. So I have to be careful with this unit. Then we have 2 units of Chaff, 8 Direwolves, 1 with a champion, the 13 Baronites with their +1 to hit banner, a Court of the Dam, which will go into the 30 Skeletons, 9 Spectral Hunters with a champion, and then a cheeky Varkalak to do cheeky Varkalak things. So this is going to be, I think this is going to be a tough matchup for me, just in the sense that though that Night Bus just zones a lot of my units pretty well. Now, granted, it doesn't want to get into the Judicators, but or the Spears if they're super buffed up with magic, but my opponent doesn't need to engage. With a Master of Occultism, those damage spells are just going to be really annoying to deal with, and so yeah, I feel like I'm going to be the one to have to push and come to my opponent in order to just keep my units alive. So for deployment and secondaries, we have Encircle and Spoils of War. My opponent rolled for sides and got to choose the attacker deployment. So then I was the one who dropped for first. And then we placed the spoils, so that's the 3 objective markers. And yep. So let's see. Yeah, we have the 3 objective markers going down, and my plan here is to just take my big units the big scoring units, the Spears and the Judicators, and push them onto the objective. Because I feel like if I can do that, then I just get the upper hand, and now I'm forcing my opponent to focus that range damage on those bigger units. Because if I do that with the Obsidian Guard, I think they just get picked apart by the amount of damage spells that my opponent has in their arsenal. So speaking of damage spells and my opponent's arsenal, you can see here that I only have 5 spells compared to my opponent, who has 9 spells. I ended up taking Word of Iron and Glory of Gold. I like the Word of Iron here to just increase that dragon's armor save to a 1-up, or even with the infantry to get them to a 3-up armor save. I like it a lot. And then having, of course, Glory of Gold in the list, the flaming and magical attacks and the +1 AP is helpful for Spears. And then I have Twisted Effigy to hopefully mitigate the breath weapon that I know my opponent's going to be taking, as well as the Wheel Turns. And then, of course, you have the Rod of Battle for that +1 to hit bounce spell. My opponent, on the other hand, took the Breath of Corruption, Hand of Glory, the Grave Calls, and now he has his Hereditary on all of his vampires. Then you have the Perception of Strength and Raven's Wing with the Spectral Hunters. And, and Awaken the Beast with the Shamanism General here. I think I got lucky here that my opponent picked Hand of Glory, because, spoiler alert, he didn't cast that spell all game, and him and I both agreed after the fact that he needed to have taken Pentagram of Pain to continue with that pressure. And yeah, with the amount of spells that he has and the powerful magic phases, the healing, the combat buffs, and then the damage, it's just a tough magic phase to deal with, but we'll see how I get on. Okay, so this picture is after my vanguards, but before my movement. So I'll start with the terrain. We have a water feature, a forest, a hill, a fence or wall. We have a field we have ruins here, and then we have some impassable terrain. From my right to left, we have Team Cuddles, so Kraken, Shadow Riders who've already vanguarded to get into a better position for the later turns. The Beastmasters, the Judicators with the Officer in there, so Buffy's holding it down with the Judicators. We have my Corsairs with the Outcast, the Spears with the Exarch, the Exarch's right here. Then we have my vanguarded Shadow Riders and Obsidian Guard covering my left flank as best as they can. For my opponent's left side, we have a vanguarded Varkalak, the 8 Spectral Hunters. I think it might be 9. Then we have, I'd have to look back at the list again. So we have the Spectral Hunters, we have the 20 Skeletons with the Relentless banner, we have his awful, gross Night Bus here with the 2 Vampire counts, so the Occultism count is here, and the Brotherhood of the Dragon is here in the middle. Then we have the Vanguarded Direwolves with a Champion, and 40 Zombies, his Generals in here. Then we have 8 more Direwolves without the Champion, 30 Skeletons with the Court of the Damned, and then 6 Bat Swarms. So my turn 1 is, since I dropped for first, I decided I'm just going to push the Judicators here, push the Spears here to grab those objectives turn 1, and then I'm going to move my Chaff right in this area. The idea being that if he charges the Chaff, it may not take him out of 18, or well, excuse me, it will keep a lot of my things out of 18 inches of the Grave's Call, so then I can focus on dispelling the breath weapon. Let's see if I'm able to actually accomplish that. Then the Obsidian Guard, again, they move in such a way to cover the left flank of the Spears so that the Varkalak can't just sneak around here. Same with the Spectral Hunters. And then, yeah, the Corsairs come around to face out this way with their light troops, as well as the Dragon flying over to, again, zone this side of the board, and the 2 Krakens kind of come and fill this gap in this area to just get into a better position, honestly. I don't feel like bringing around this side. While the water feature was appealing, I did want my Team Cuddles to have a nice, healthy bath for Krakens, so hopefully they can hit better in combat. But no! My opponent decided to counter-deploy in a way where he ended up keeping all of his strong assets away from my strong side here. One could debate that I could switch the Obsidian Guard with the Judicators and have the Judicators here. But the issue I kind of had was that with this impassable, and this was my, like, the small flank, I couldn't actually march up in a way to grab this objective because you had to stay outside of an inch of the impassable anyway. So this objective, I figured, well, I'm just going to just hand it to my opponent, and I'm just going to really focus on grabbing and holding these 2 objectives with my large infantry units. So, yeah, is what it is. I think my opponent definitely out-deployed me here, and we'll see what I can do in the magic phase to kind of help with that. In my magic phase, I got the 7 phase, and I ended up saving 3 tokens because I figured it wasn't going to be such an eventful phase yet, or at least my opponent's turn 1, I didn't think he was planning on charging anything aside from my chaff. So I ended up getting Word of Iron off on the dragon, but that was about it, because my opponent saved all of his dice for Twisted Effigy, which I had cast on the Direwolf unit with the champion. So, there you go. Dispelled Twisted Effigy attempt number 1. So yeah, let's see what happens from there. Like I said, my opponent charged the chaff that I had put in front of him, and his direwolf champion is within 18 inches of the spears. Something to also note here is that his vampire is also just not only within 18 inches of my spear unit, but can actually see the spear unit because of my unit's footprint, and that was something I didn't quite account for. So I know I had more movement with my Shadow Riders, and I could have definitely put them up closer to that dangerous terrain, or to the ruins, just to make sure that if my opponent did decide to charge the chaff, the Grave Coals was certainly out of range of the spears. And so that was a big mistake on my part, I think. Is something I easily could have calculated for. But there you have it. So my opponent chaffs my spears here, brings his Varkalak in a way where that if I charge the Varkalak with the Obsidian Guard, I would have to maximize at this point here, which would only get me at maximum 2 models in base contact, and I think the Varkalak therefore has his way with my Obsidian Guard unit. However, on the flip side to that, the Varkalak is in a position where he's facing forward this way, which means if he wants to charge anything, he actually really can't, because he had to wheel, and then it would mean he'd have to double wheel, which you can't do, in order to clear this impassable and then come down. So the Spectral Hunters instead decided to cover this. Anything that came into this area, they can charge past that impassable because of their Ghost Step rule. Everything else you can see, just the skeletons move up, zombies turn to face. The middle, his skeletons actually, I think, backed up a bit, and then the bat swarms as well kind of backed up too. So he's just keeping his units safe, getting ready to chaff if he needs to, keeping me at a distance, clearing my chaff, and yeah, we'll then go into his magic. My opponent's turn 1 magic phase, he got the 3 phase, and you'll notice that not only did he get Breath of Corruption off, which that I think I let through, but I saved my dice for the Grave Calls, and he diced me on 4 dice to my 5. I didn't roll well, so uh-oh. That spear unit is now in a little bit of trouble. And boom. Yep. So that's a combination of Grave Calls and the Breath of Corruption. Losing 8 models hurts, but to be fair, I think I also got off a bit lucky there too. It could have been way worse. But, and that's the turn 1 magic phase, so I have 5 more turns of this. Oh, man. Yeah. So, there you have it. Just, yeah, gross. So yeah, that's what it looks like at the top of my turn 2. Yeah, so Adjudicators are here on top of this hill. Well, I think at this point their center is still not quite there, so I'm not going to get that reroll bonus in case I wanted to charge anything. Mr. Cuddles number 2 can shoot through here, but the first Kraken he'd have to wheel here. The Corsairs are facing out this way, Obsidian Guard facing in this direction now, and then my Shadow Riders just coming around to try and plug the gap here in case anything wants to come around this side of the impassable. So, okay. With my opponent's first magic phase, it could have been worse with both those spells going off, but, it still took a hit. So, yeah, let's see what I can do. So, yeah, we got charges here. My spears are going to charge the direwolves. I also decided, this is probably questionable, but I decided an 8 charge for the Obsidian Guard, so they needed an 8 here to charge into the direwolves as well. That is a flank. My thinking with this is just getting this unit up in front and using them as more of a preliminary roadblock, seeing as how my chaff is already a bit out of position. Yeah, And then if I can put them somewhere in front here, my opponent does have to deal with them in a way, because then I can be facing that zombie unit and charge it and see if I can punk his general if he's not careful. But I think my opponent is a bit savvier than that, to be honest. So yeah, I declare these charges, and obviously the spears can make it in, they're auto, but the Obsidian Guard fail. Interestingly though, the Obsidian Guard fail in a way where the Spectral Hunters actually can't see them. So, and the Varkalak still can't charge them. So I'm actually pretty happy about that. I don't think my opponent's going to charge the Obsidian Guard, and if he does, I'm also happy to flee in this direction here. So there'll be plenty of room for that, and then I can have counter-charging units on that night bus once I reform everything. So, and if push comes to shove, if I'm too chaffed up and don't feel comfortable charging, I can just bring this chaff here to block that area. But yeah, so my chaff comes over to do exactly what might happen, either block this area or to block something that comes up in this direction. The dragons and the kraken start making their way over here to now kind of counter pressure this unit, seeing as how the Judicators are again super out of position. Both my units pick up the objective here, and the Judicators have to do a wheel and then are now on top of the hill to get some good rerolls out, and they are within academy range here too. In case I want to benefit from that, the Corsairs go too wide with their light troops, and then the Outcast is facing this way, so the unit is facing towards this open area here. So yeah, that's how it's looking turn 2. Now, my plan here is to buff the spears with magic and say, okay, if you charge the spears, these charges here with the skeletons, for example, and the bat swarms are super long. I think the skeletons need like a 9 or a 10, but the knights are much closer. So I'm just going to plan on buffing the spears and saying, if you want to do it, you can, but you're just going to have everything else just countercharge you. So let's see if I can get some magic buffs off. So as for magic buffs, I do get Word of Iron and Glory of Gold on the spears, and I was able to put the flammable token onto the night bus. So now I'm pretty sure my opponent will not want to charge into the spears at this point. I think he has some cheekier, devilish plans in mind. And I think, yeah, at this rate, he's just going to say, I'm fine with not charging the spears. I'm just going to, again, focus on getting this unit down to a much more manageable size. And then he can probably charge it in later turns. And this is what it looks like after combat. I reform the spears. They're still 8 wide, so I can get maximum attacks just in case. And it also keeps everything in their front, aside from, say, the Varkalak and the Spectral Hunters. The Spectral Hunters can see the spears, but I think that charge is actually too far from this distance here. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty happy about that. So, onto my opponent's, his turn 2. But first, let's take a look at some action shots, just for fun. So action shots wise, yeah, you have Mr. Cuddles 2, Mr. Cuddles, it's Team Cuddles holding down my left flank as best as they can with the Beastmaster facing off against that night bus. To be honest, I don't think I really want any of these units into the night bus. But you know what? They're there to be threatening, especially with names like Mr. Cuddles. But yeah, my ultimate goal is to just get this dragon probably over into this area, utilize that impassable terrain, and just be a nuisance and perhaps threaten that Spectral Hunter unit as well. And yeah, we got Team Cuddles just looking sassy. And speaking of looking sassy, You got the two vampires. You have the Master of Occultism there, the Brotherhood of the Dragon Vampire. Ugh, that threatening night bus. That's just a pain to deal with and a lot of points. And then here's a picture of my right flank. Now you'll notice here that this is actually after my opponent's movement in turn 2, but I had positioned my Judicators in a way where they had turned too far in, and that allowed his bat swarms to move out of their arc. And now I have nothing countering that. I think what I'm going to do here is try and bring these Corsairs around, move my Outcast into the spears, and yeah, hope for the best there. So my opponent's turn to movement. Yep, we got more chaff from the dire wolves. We have those bat swarms out to my right flank, just turning to face my units here with his zombies and his skeletons, and just again turning to meet the threat of Team Cuddles with his night bus. The Varkalak, cheeky Varkalak, comes right around to start being a nuisance and threatening my flank, which I didn't really appropriately cover with the dragon. So now that Varkalak doesn't really get any good counter charges that I want to be charging here. I mean, he did give me a front with the Dark Raiders, or, well, Shadow Riders. But yeah, I'm probably not going to charge them into the Varkalak. I think they just die. On to my opponent's magic phase. I got a bit lucky. He got the 1 phase here, saved 3 tokens, and I was able to stop the grave calls, but he did get some zombies. He's bringing out his dead. So the zombies are going to be rather important, actually, in a later turn, spoiler alert, in terms of chaffing one of my units. So I let the zombies come up in order to stop the crucial grave calls, but other than that, that is it for my opponent's magic. With that being said, now things are starting to get interesting. You'll notice that the Judicators are no longer on top of the hill. I decided to charge the chaff here. They did have to wheel a little bit, and then they ended up being able to clip here for the chaff. Folks, I would not recommend this. This is a fun and friendly game, and it's going to open things up for sure, but I don't think this is actually a very smart move to do. However, my reason being is that it's risky, and I'll show you why. My thought process here was to hit the chaff, start beefing up that armor save for Buffy. However, then I need to make an overrun, and this overrun is super important. Now, I can overrun this way, right? And that actually only needs a 4 to get out of this unit's line of sight. When I say this unit, I mean the night bus. So I only need a 4 here, so that's essentially, I'm feeling okay with that. However, the unit footprint of my Judicators is still rather large, and in order to get out of this skeleton's unit's line of sight, I have to roll, I believe, a 9, and yeah, that's, with 2 dice, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, if it was any other skeleton unit, I wouldn't be as fussed about it, but because it has a Court of the Damned in there and there's so much combat resolution, I'm just not going to do a lot back to that unit, and then they'll probably just break me, and then I'm fleeing this way, and that's my turn, so then he can just charge me. So the Judicators are super out of position. I drop the objective. His units can grab the objective, and then it's just not fun. For Judicators, at least. But yeah, we'll see if I'm able to make this sort of maneuver happen. On other fronts, my Corsairs came around on top of the hill to countercharge the bat swarms in case they want to charge into the Judicators or charge into the spears here in their flank or rear. Yeah, I wanted to deal with the bat swarms in some way, so I figured, well, I might as well use the Corsairs. I then reformed the spears into 7 wide to give me ranks, and I back up a little bit from this night bus charge. So from the distance from the bat swarms to the spears here is, I believe, a 7. And then I also moved my Exarch over on this side to give me a bit more combat resolution in case the bat swarms decide to come in. The Outcast is in the spears as well. I moved her out. Just to get her closer to this night bus to get the wheel turns in range in case they wanted to come in that way. Chaff comes up to do exactly that, to Chaff. I highly doubt he's going to want to charge my Chaff, but in case he does, I'm just setting up a flea here and to get some counter charges onto this night bus here with the dragon and maybe one Kraken, because I'd probably be chaffing one of the other Krakens if I decided to flee. And this distance here, say if I hold, actually, you can see this line here is 12 inches. So no matter what, he can't just hit the chaff and then overrun into any of my units. So yeah, that being said, the dragon came over. I figured, well, I have a breath weapon. I'm going to try and put some wounds on this Varkalak, because why not? Now, and the Obsidian Guard actually came over to face off against the Varkalak, and I think with the breath weapon maybe punking a wound or 2 on him, then yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident about the Obsidian Guard finishing off the Varkalak in case he wants to come in. Yeah, so that is essentially my movement done. And into Magic, I also get the 1 phase, and my opponent stops everything. Well, he saves everything for the wheel's turn, or the wheel turns. Lots of S's today. But I am able to get a Twisted Effigy and Evil Eye off on this unit. So now this unit can't use its breath weapon, and I think it might even be the boosted version. I'm not sure. So that would also make the Grave Calls a bit more difficult to cast too. But yeah, I'm happy about that, because now this Night Bus charge into my spears, if he wants it, is now, let's see, now an 11. So yeah, I'm okay with that result. And boom, there you have it. You have the Judicators doing exactly what they needed to do and rolling a 10 on their overrun. So not only are they out of line of sight from this night bus here, they're also out of line of sight from this skeleton unit, and now are just putting so much pressure on my opponent's units here. So now he has to use the zombies to chaff the Judicators. And focus now all of his range damage on the Judicator unit instead of the spears. And you can see these 2 little markers here. That's for my Seal of the Republic, just to let me know where my armor save is at on my Selixian officer here. So, woof. Yep. I got super lucky, not going to lie. But now, hey, it's a friendly game, like I said, and it's just going to make things a lot more interesting for my opponent. So this is just an overview right before my opponent's turn. You'll see here I actually did do 2 wounds to the Varkalak. So yay, Beastmaster, you did something. And then with shooting from the handbows, I put a wound on some bat swarms. So good job, Corsairs. All right. You also did something. So yep, that's how it's looking right before the Vampires, turn 3. Charges. Yes, you have it. The Bat Swarms are indeed charging my spear unit. They need a 7, and guess what? They rolled the 6. Oh, I got lucky again. Oh, no. Because it's one of those things where I feel like the more and more I get lucky in the beginning, the later I will start to experience the other way around on the dice. So, yeah. Again, I got lucked out. I'm not terribly concerned about that. If the bat swarms had come in, it does hold the spears up for a little bit, but I still think I have a decent amount of combat resolution here now that I'm in ranks, and the Exarch is on the side, and then I can get rid of them on my turn with the Corsairs. So, it's not ideal, but hey, I failed. My opponent failed the charge, so yep, that happened. And this is what it looks like at the end of my opponent's movement phase. You can see the dreaded dinner plate has come onto the field. So that was the only charge my opponent had with the bat swarms. He moves everything else, as you can see. Just the skeletons to face off here, the zombies to, again, just look at the Judicators. The Night Bus to, again, look at the Judicators, and then he backs up as well. The Spectral Hunters come in around on this side to offer more support, because now the Judicators are right there. So, and his Varkalak just says, nope, I'm not charging the Obsidian Guard. I'm just going to come around this way and try and get a heal off. So, yeah, I don't blame my opponent for that. But I mean, it's a good trade for my opponent in the end because he can just heal it, and I've now allocated all of these points just to deal with one Varkalak. So, yeah, like I said, again, good play on my opponent here to bring me over to this side, and now he can just easily just focus on one unit at a time. But that is how it's looking after my opponent's movement phase. On to my opponent's magic phase. It's the 5 phase. So, yep, it's a big one. But my opponent actually suffers a little bit of bad luck this time, aside from my great luck, is that I think he even fails to cast the Grave Calls on this turn. Or perhaps I saved everything to dispel it. But he did get Breath of Corruption off here, but he didn't even manage to heal back the Varkalak. So I think this was a phase where my opponent really suffered some... he just suffered some bad luck. And then the Breath of Corruption in this phase actually whiffed. It didn't do any wounds to the Judicators. So I got off lightly there, that's for sure. So, that being said, onto my charges, and Judicators, of course, are going to charge the Chaffing Zombies, and then you can see here, my Corsairs on the hill are going to attempt to charge here on the Bat Swarms. It is rerollable. I believe they need a 6 or a 7 here, so they go for it. And both units, of course, are in. The Judicators are auto. When I say, of course, the Corsairs actually didn't even need the reroll. They just got in. So that's how it's looking like on that front. And then that is my... Well, excuse me. Those are my only 2 charges I have this phase. So, on to movement. Now it's time for me to start being aggressive. I moved my dragon from this position here to here, and then brought the Krakens up as well to support my spears, support the Judicators, and then I chaffed his Night Bus. However, I think in hindsight, when I look at this, I could have just chaffed in a different way, because what this does here, when I do this, it allows an overrun into the Judicators. What I can do is kill the zombies, reform to face this way, facing out the other unit of zombies and the skeletons, but it still leaves this Night Bus an overrun into my rear with like an 8 or a 9, and that is, it's not great. So I think what I really need to do is just chaff in a different way, just angle this Shadow Rider unit a bit more out. My concern here was that he was going to charge his character out if I had done that into the rear of the Judicators anyway. But I think if the Judicators just take zombies and skeletons, like, and with the one character, I still think I'm okay with that. And then if that was going to happen, if I can reform in a way where it would put his character in base contact with my general, so I could just allocate my attacks to his general if, or like he'd have to maximize in a way that would force that because of the base size here with the court and the zombies. However, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have been concerned about it. I don't know. But this was the chaffing I came up with in the moment. So yeah, Team Cuddles and the Beastmaster are threatening the Knight unit. Then we have the Obsidian Guard, again, facing this way, just to make sure that Varkalak can't just be more of a nuisance and come around this side. And then, yep, Corsairs into Bat Swarms. I'm happy with that. So, on to my turn 4 magic. I get the 5 phase as well, so it's a big phase, and this is important because not only do I get Glory of Goldoff onto the Judicators and make that Night Bus flammable, but I also get, more crucially, the wheel turns on the Night Bus. So now, I do not think my opponent is going to try and get an overrun into the Judicators, so I feel a bit more confident in reforming to face the zombies and the skeletons unit. So overall, super happy about that result. And here we go, the Corsairs. Oh my goodness. They rolled out of the box. They definitely overperformed here. I think with all those attacks back, I crumbled the Bat Swarms basically to the health point. I only took 2 casualties in return. So, yeah. Couldn't have asked for anything better. So now I get to reform the Corsairs. I'm in the Skeleton's flank and get to cause some more shenanigans. And of course, speaking of let's go, yep, Judicators reformed to do exactly that. They face the skeletons, they face the zombies, and I put my general here, so if he does decide to come in with both, for maximizing purposes, it still would put his general in base contact with Buffy. Just, yes, give Buffy her vampire kill, please. So, yeah, we'll see what my opponent decides to do now. So, my opponent, therefore, decides to charge the chaff, but then nothing else. Which, at this rate, he's just going to get rid of the chaff, but he has a plan, and I know this plan. And it's just to say, yep, I'm going to get rid of your chaff and reform in a way that I can still be threatening and make sure he's not giving me any sort of, good charges or favorable charges, and everything is within range of the Judicators, so I think the Judicators might be in a bit of trouble. So, yeah, that is his movement there. He moves his vampire out of the zombies, knowing that I don't have really any range to threaten that vampire anyway, so it doesn't really matter to him. He puts his 40 zombies right in front of the Judicators to just be a roadblock. The spears, his skeleton unit faces my spears this way. He couldn't get out of the flank, or he couldn't get it so that my Corsairs were still in his front, so he just chose to back up as much as possible there, leaving this to be perhaps with Academy training a 6. It was 7 on 2 dice, and then Academy brought it to a 6. And his skeletons turned to face as such, and then his Spectral Hunters are also in an interesting position. He moved them in a way so that his spectral hunters are threatening this area in case any of my Krakens want to make any daring charges. And then they're out of line of sight of my dragon here. So well played there. Not only that, but he brought his cheeky Varkalak to be cheeky with one of my Krakens here. So yeah, he's chaffing my Kraken. He's chaffing Mr. Cuddles. And yep, just going to prevent one of my Krakens from getting into a combat that I want, in case I wanted to charge. And onto my opponent's magic phase. From left to right, you see the magic phase, and then you see the dice that my opponent rolled, and then you see lots of dead Judicators. So, yeah, I failed to stop the Grave Calls. I let the Breath of Corruption go through. And this roll here is his Breath of Corruption roll. He rolled a 10 on the dice and then all 10 wounded. That hurt. And then he rolled also 9, I think, on Grave Calls, and I got lucky that he rolled 3 1s. So he just rolled out of the box, and this Judicator unit is just, that hurt. That one absolutely hurt. And after that brutal magic and shooting phase, he clears my chaff and reforms to face Team Cuddles and the Beastmaster. So, yep, I take the bait. I charge with everything. Well, not everything. I decided to charge the dragon into the night bus. I decided to charge Mr. Cuddles into the Varkalak, and then I charged Mr. Cuddles 2 into the Varkalak as well. And my plan here is to get this overrun once I kill the Varkalak into his night bus, fight on my turn, and maybe try and snipe that vampire. So I figure he's probably going to challenge my dragon out with a champion first round. And then, yeah, let's see what happens from there. But I mean, I don't think this is a great idea, to be honest, y'all. I think really what I should have done is just at least try and clear the Varkalak, but fly the dragon around the impassable and threaten the spectral hunters and threaten his general. So, yeah, that was definitely the wiser play, in my opinion. But, hey, it's a fun game. Let's go. Let's charge. Let's try and kill some things, and let's see what happens. Yeah, the spears go for their charge into the skeletons, the Corsairs as well. And everyone gets in. Most things were auto, but the spears was really the only questionable one. But yep, they get in. So that's how I have it. I'm happy. Well, yeah, I'm tempting fate. Let's just put it like that. Let's see how Team Cuddles gets along here. So I'm curious. I'm pretty sure they can deal with the Varkalak, but it's the night bus that I'm rather concerned about at the moment. However, you might also notice something. Here's my Temple Exarch, right here. And then here is my Outcast. And so if we move over to this picture, that is more than 18 inches away from this combat. So, yep, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. Now I don't really have the magic to be able to support this combat, and yeah, that's not good. What I do have, however, is at least a leadership 10 bubble that is within this range here. So let's see if that's enough to help me here. And for the rest of my movement, it's basically how you see it. You have the Obsidian Guard coming back around reforming to help support, I guess. I'm not sure if that was really the right play there, but maybe just try and conserve points. But hey, they're there. They want to fight too, right? The Judicators reform to face this way and to face the flank, of course, of the Night Bus to try and threaten them. So now my opponent's going to be forced to put some zombies in front of them. And if they're in front and I charge, they're in combat, they don't get grave called or breathed to death here. So if they're in combat, I'm happy. Yep. So that's my movement. And then on to magic. I get the 8 phase, save 2, and I'm able to get a Glory of Gold up on this unit to give me that sweet rerolls to wound on the spears. And I also get a Rod of Battle up on this dragon. So, yay, +1 to hit. That was as best as I could do. I believe my opponent saved his dice for another Twisted Effigy, just because I really wanted to put that -2 on the Night Bus there to just make all those spells more difficult to cast. And this is what it looks like before and after that skeleton unit. So, or that skeleton unit comment, I should say. So yeah, I put all my attacks as much as possible onto the Court of the Dam, and I was able to kill it. So I got a little lucky there, but with the rerolls to wound and going through the armor of it, it only had a 5-up Aegis save, and I think I put around 8 wounds onto it. So I did get a bit lucky there, but it still ended up killing, I think, 4 spears in return. And then you'll also notice that I took 2 wounds on my Outcast. So that's not great. But then the Corsairs, of course, do their Corsair-y thing and kill a whole bunch of skeletons, which I'm happy about. Also, something to note here, my opponent and I checked this out, is that the Corsairs don't actually have to take a fear test because they were not in base contact with the Court of the Damned. So that was an interesting moment to figure out. And the spears don't anyway because they're frenzied due to the Exarch's ability. And yeah, so that's before Crumble and after Crumble with 3 units. Ideally, it would have been nice to have crumbled the unit, but hey, I'll get it next turn. And yay! The Cuddles team takes care of the Varkalak. To be fair, though, I did all my attacks at once, and I think I hit like twice. So they did live up to their name. They definitely did more cuddling than killing here, but what ended up happening was I got 2 wounds through. I think my opponent saved 1 on Fortitude, and then I rolled the D3 and got the 2 remaining wounds on the Varkalak. However, he did put, I think, a wound on one of my Krakens as well. So, yeah, that wasn't very nice. But the Kraken makes that overrun. So this is after the combat, however. He feeds me as champion. I don't even do max overkill. My opponent just made some great armor saves here. So yeah, I think the dragon was the one who actually killed the champion, to be honest. But then you'll also notice there's still a vampire there, and now my Kraken has 2 extra wounds. I think, to be fair, I think my opponent fluffed some rolls a little bit. The Kraken being distracting might have helped. But yeah. Kraken took 2 wounds. I did 3 wounds back in a charge. He has a banner and a rank now that I killed the champion. So I think it ends up being a push. And now it's my opponent's turn. And that's just an overview of what everything looks like after all the combats. So, also keep in mind, the Kraken slid down just a little bit, so in case it survives, Mr. Cuddles can come in and hopefully get another round of attacks onto that vampire. But yeah, I'm not too confident about that, to be honest, judging how the first Kraken did. So we'll see if I end up making that decision or not. But this is the vampire's movement. So turn 5 movement, he brings his Spectral Hunters over on this side to charge through in case he needs it. His general moves into the skeleton unit. He moves his zombies in a way to chaff my Judicators. And yeah, that's pretty much what you're looking at the end of turn 5. And he ends up, for his magic phase, he gets the 6th phase and is able to grow back more zombies. But other than that, he really doesn't get much. So after combats, I crumble the skeleton unit. So that was pretty foregone conclusion there. And I also reform the Corsairs too wide to face out that way to allow the spears to just get them through and to charge. However, you'll notice that Mr. Cuddles 2 and the Beastmaster are gone. Yeah. The Kraken died this time to the vampire, which wasn't really a surprise, but then I accepted a challenge with his Blood of the Dragon character. I actually ended up doing a total of 4 wounds to him, but between his armor save and his Aegis, he made all of it. I just couldn't get through. To this vampire. And then he ends up doing another, I think several wounds to me. And I know I lost combat by 7 due to the regrowth of the champion and the 2 ranks in the banner. And so my Beastmaster needed Snake Eyes on minimized. And here the Kraken would have been in General's leadership, but the Beastmaster was not, which, I mean, it still would have made it a 3. But yep, the Beastmaster broke and got ran down, and you can see the Night Bus bumping into this terrain piece here. So yeah, I charge. Top of 6, let's get these units into combat. Let's tie them up and make sure that I can't be, can't have grave calls casted on me. So I'm absolutely going to do that. And I don't have a picture of the remainder of my movement, but I decide inevitably to move the Kraken out of arc of the Night Bus. I move the Obsidian Guard in a way where their flank is facing the Vampire Night Bus. However, I put them right up as much as I could against the Impassable, so it was an impossible charge anyway. And then I moved the Corsairs back as far as I could just to get them out of range of any potential magic damage. And here I'm able to get a Twisted Effigy off on the Night Bus, as well as a Glory of Gold off. I believe I got it on the spears. So yeah, the spears ended up having Glory of Gold. I got the 2-phase, and yep, we get Twisted Effigy off. So, I mean, I'm doing my best here now. And this is what it looks like after combats. You can see the Kraken is just noping it on out of there. And same with the Corsairs. They're just trying to get as far away as possible. The Obsidian Guard are, they can't be charged. So basically, it just forces my opponent to reform and then move this way to try and get some remaining points. The Spectral Hunters could go for it here into the Judicators. However, my Exarch is still here, so I could, theoretically kill, say, 3 of them, maybe 2. Well, 2, maybe 3. To help with that. I don't think my opponent's going to do that, but, she's there anyway just to give some moral support. And yeah, that's what it looks like for my opponent's turn 6 movement. Nothing much to really report here. Just, he moves the Night Bus here to try and get some, one last chance at a Grave Calls. He can't use his Breath Weapon here, so, yep, all I need to do is really just stop the Grave Calls. And in the Magic phase, it's the 8 phase. And not only does he grow back some zombies, but he also gets Perception of Strength off on the zombies, and he kills my Outcast. Aww. So, yep. That was also a little bit expected at this rate. But yeah, she tried. So the zombies, dragged her down, unfortunately. And that's what it looks like. Oh my goodness, that is the end of the game. It is a close one, I'm not going to lie. My opponent did not get half points for the Judicators, and so I know I got the objective. I'm thinking I won because I got the objective. Otherwise, because I lost the Dragon and the Kraken, I'm probably losing on points at this rate. So there you have it, friends. It is a 12-8 victory to the Dread Elves because I took the objective. My opponent had me on points from an 11-9 to a 12-8 because of the 3-point swing. Yeah, so final thoughts about the game here. The question I had was the deployment with the Judicators and whether or not I should have deployed them on the left side and just had the Obsidian Guard go for that right side objective, being supported by Team Cuddles and the Beastmaster. But then I guess the question would be, would my opponent have then deployed his Night Bus on the other side to be able to use all that range damage to pick off the Obsidian Guard and then to threaten the Krakens and the Dragon rather immediately? And then the Judicators are still having the issue of being out of position and then having to struggle even more to pick up that other objective just due to the fact that the impassable terrain prevented that march up on turn 1. So, yeah, lesson learned. Don't charge that Night Bus. Or at least in the way that I did it. I think, experimenting a bit to see what the Beastmaster could do, and what if maybe the Kraken could get lucky and kill that vampire, which absolutely would have changed the game for sure. But the better play, in my opinion, is to have just stuck with my original plan, taken the Dragon around the Impassable to threaten the Spectral Hunters, and maybe even get to that skeleton bunker in the back where his general was hiding. So I think ultimately that's a better play there. I still would have had to deal with the Varkalak and then probably feed the Night Bus a Kraken, but at that rate, I'm making it more of a trade. My opponent definitely lamented on the fact that he didn't have Pentagram of Pain just to put more damage spells onto the field and pressure my scoring units. I think that would have made the game a lot harder for me, to be honest. And yeah, the mistake with the Outcast positioning really hurt me, I think, in that crucial combat. So that's certainly something to keep in mind when you're using the wheel turns, or trying to use the wheel turns as one of those primary spells to get your units to do what they need to do or to protect them from really scary Death Star units. There's, again, the chaffing question with the Night Bus that I had as well. But Yeah, I think I could have chaffed that better to prevent that overrun potential. Um, and knowing the fact that I'm essentially giving the charge of that vampire into the rear of the adjudicators, or at least on that overrun, I'm really not sure if my opponent actually would have taken that, to be honest. So those are the things that I learned and, or at least reflected upon after the match. Um, and yeah, again, it was lots of fun. Thank you, Vamps Maryland, for the game. Um, if you're in the Berlin area and want to get a game in, yes, please hit me up again on the forum, the Ninth Age forum at CHTAY001. It'd be a blast, and who knows, maybe you might show up in one of these potential future battle reports. Until then, thank you everyone for listening. This was a blast, and I'll catch you next time.